Ken, thanks for squeezing us in between massages. I mean, work calls. You talked about the other day in one of your newsletters for The Athletic about the NL Cy Young race, which, as you mentioned, is just very meh. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? I'm pretty much assuming you're not a voter. You couldn't write about it. I have MVP, which is always very, very stressful. How do you feel about the NL Cy Young race as we get down into deep September?
The problem, Britt, is that too often now we don't see starters going 200 innings and making the traditional Cy Young case. And the two best ERAs right now belong to two guys who are probably going to finish with about 180 innings. I'm talking about Blake Snell and Justin Steele. Zach Gallen, who Tyler Kepner wrote about today in The Athletic, has a greater number of innings, about 187, but the ERA is a good amount higher than those two. So we're looking at a group of pitchers that doesn't exactly resemble Garrett Cole, who leads the American League in innings and ERA. That's the kind of profile that I generally look for. And I know ERA is not a perfect metric, and I know rate stats matter and all of these things, but at the same time, we're looking for the best pitcher. And it's a difficult thing to define nowadays because you don't have a guy necessarily going 230 innings and leading his team in that sense. It's just a thing of the past. People talk about expected stats, and those are all well and good, but I think AJ would agree, and Eric too, that this is a results-oriented industry. This is not about expected stats. It's about what you actually do.
Okay, wait, Ken, you never answered the question. What award do you have a vote for this year?
I can't say, AJ.
Hey, Ken.
I can't say.
Wait, you can't? Nope. I'm not allowed to say what I have?
No, you can, but I can't in this particular case.
So he's voting for the Cy Young. He has the NL Cy Young. That's what he has. Because he won't give us a winner either.
You're such a bully.
You little sneaky person, you.
Don't let
Ken, blink twice. Blink twice if it's the NL Cy Young.
Yeah. So, but Brittany, what Brittany doesn't understand though is she just told us she has this MVP vote.
She can say that. I can.
No,
say
I understand, but she doesn't
understand
it. She always understand. She doesn't understand that once you tell me who you have a vote for, I always make you say on the air who you're voting for, and you never will. So now I want to know, Brittany, do you have NL or AL?
Well, I don't know. I can't tell you.
Oh my gosh,
AJ!
Wow.
If I were a voter for this particular award, I would be at this moment undecided. I don't know who I would vote for.
I mean,
right
because
now, because it's wide open, really.
The three candidates that most people talk about are the three you mentioned, right? Gallen, Snell, Steele, and they all have different pluses and they have different minuses. I think if you would have said 2 weeks ago, Snell would have had this thing, I don't want to say locked up, but he was ahead of everybody, right? Steele has come back. His last couple starts kind of jumped right back in. Gallen's been kind of the most consistent all year. Snell got off to a rough start, had the real high. Now he's kind of fallen a little bit. It's going to be crazy. Is there a way someone could sneak in that we're not even talking about?
Yes, and he's pitching tonight. Spencer Strider.
Spencer Strider's the one.
Strider, crazy strikeout numbers, rate, total, however you want to look at it. He has the widest margin between expected and actual ERAs among starters. So if he gets hot again, and he's had two really uncharacteristically poor starts in a row, if he gets hot down the stretch, not that it's really going to matter for the Braves because they're going to clinch any moment now, but I can see him becoming part of the conversation as well. He's been part of the conversation. It's just those last few starts have not been what we normally expect from Spencer Strider. And he's had some inconsistency all season long. He's had some blow-up starts, which all pitchers do, of course. But he has not been necessarily as consistently dominant as you would generally want your Cy Young to be.
Just like all the other Cy Youngs, you said, it's kind of been meh. So what is going to be the separator? Because in MVP voting, it's like, well, who is the most valuable player? Aaron Judge was the most valuable player. How do you separate that with Cy Young? Because it's really just a dude playing on an area where there's no grass. Like, he's just he's a lone wolf out there. So you can have a guy like Blake Snell on a team that's 8 games out winning it.
Eric, it's totally subjective. And that's the beauty of these awards. You can argue about them. You can debate them. In Snell's case, 2018, when he won the American League Award, I believe it was with 180 innings. Verlander was at about 215. It's a 35-inning difference or so. Not sure the exact numbers. And Verlander had the higher ERA, but I felt because of the innings he should beat Snell. Now, Snell won the award. Snell is going to finish with about the same number of innings, most likely this season, in that 180 range. In this day and age, that probably would be enough for him if he continues pitching as well as he has. He does have the highest walk rate in the majors, which is kind of crazy considering he's so successful. But that is where we are now. Justin Steele can't be ruled out either. He's pitched extremely well all year. He has been very consistent. Doesn't, again, have the innings portfolio that maybe you would want. But as I wrote, it's not 1973. It's 2023, and different standards apply than they did then. And as voters, the people who are voting for this award have to look at it along those lines.
Do you have an amount of innings in your mind that, like, you just compared Verlander and Snell, 35 innings, that's 1 inning a start. That is, while it may not sound like a lot for everybody who's watching, that is a lot of innings. So do you have a separator if somebody's 10 innings separating each other? Does that sway it, or does it have to be more like 15 or 20?
Eric, I don't go hard and fast on anything like that because it's just too rigid. You look at kind of a number of things, innings being one of them. But the year that it was Verlander versus Snell, 2018 American League, I felt 35 innings was a huge separator. And you said 1 inning per start. I looked at it as 5 7-inning starts. And when you have that much higher a total, you'll have a greater margin for error, right? You're pitching more. So your ERA likely will be higher. And at the same time, that kind of pitcher, let's use Garrett Cole as an example. He is saving his bullpen. He's putting his team in a better position to win, not just on the day he pitches, but on subsequent days as well. And while that doesn't necessarily fit the definition of the award, which is best pitcher, it factors in for me because there is value in that kind of starting pitcher.
Ken, you mentioned it, the Snell Verlander. The year Snell won it, he was known as like a 5-and-dive guy. I mean, he hasn't really changed because he throws such high pitch counts, right? And the thing you always look for, and I agree with everything you're saying here, you always look for guys that could go deep into games. If you're doing starting pitcher for Cy Young, because you want, like Kratz said, 35 innings. That's just saving bullpen guys. That's saving your team. That is what you look for the definition of Cy Young. How come there's no NL relievers that we're talking about this year? Is it just a down year for the NL and relief pitching?
Good question, AJ. I haven't really considered any NL relievers. Obviously, we've had some good ones, Devin Williams being maybe foremost among them. He comes immediately to mind. But to win this award as a reliever, you have to be pretty much lights out the whole year. And I do not like voting for relievers for this award. It's just, to me, more of a starting pitching award. There have been exceptions to that, of course. We know that. But I don't see it that way. Some people will say the MVP award is more suitable for relievers because of the value they give their team on, say, 60 to 70 nights a year. I sort of see that a little bit better, but for Cy Young, it says best pitcher. To me, it means best starting pitcher.
Wouldn't this be the year a guy could sneak in if there was a guy having a great year? Because, like we talked about, there's not a starter having a great, like a truly. In most years, there's like one guy that you're like, okay, this guy's having a historical year. Boom, he's the obvious choice. Well, this year, like we're kind of, it's almost like we're trying to talk Ken into who he's voting for here for his NL Cy Young vote by talking about all this. So this would be the one year you'd think in a reliever if there was one, but obviously there's not one other than Devin Williams that is having a great year where they could sneak in and steal one.
Yeah, I don't see it. And there's not that kind of guy out there to really challenge the starting pitchers. In the conversations that you're reading about with writers starting to look at this a little more closely, you're not seeing much mention of relievers at all because it is a year in which there are a number of interesting starters, maybe not slam dunk Cy Young types, but guys at least you can feel comfortable voting for.